I'm Bill Steffen. Thanks so much for coming to my YouTube channel. We got a little bit of family fun for you today. I'm being joined by daughter number three. We got some pictures to share with you. I think you'll find it pretty interesting, so stay tuned.
Hey, Dad.
How you doing, Mish?
Good. Nice to talk to you.
It's good to be here. Much colder up here in Michigan as we record this than it is down there where you are in Alabama.
Yeah, it's pretty cold for us, though. Alabama's made me soft.
We got
It's
some nice
40 degrees
pictures to
and it
share with
feels so
everybody.
cold. Yeah, let's get to the first one. So we're still working on how the video is going to work. So bear with us on that. At some point, we do hope that we're going to be on video doing these, but we thought we got the audio going, so we thought we'd try out doing one of these with audio and just sharing some family photos. So here we go. What do we have here?
That is my mother, and that's when she was in her mid to upper 90s, believe it or not. And we have Rosie the cat. Interesting story about Rosie. Mom wanted to have a cat, but didn't want a cat because of the fact that she thought she would step on the cat's tail. Well, lo and behold, the local animal center there, the Humane Society, had a cat come in without a tail. A tail had been run over by a car or whatever, and this was a stray cat. And this turned out to be the most wonderful cat for my mother. She was so thrilled to have a cat and some companionship there. You can see my mother with her sweet smile. She lived to be 100 and a half and drove a car the day she died. So really an interesting life to share. But really nice picture of her, and that cat would come up and sit in her lap, and you can see both of them are looking at the camera right on cue.
And now Rosie's my cat.
Yeah, I ought to
She's
tell
been
you
behind.
a little bit about that. We went down, my wife Gail and I went down to pick Rosie up because Rosie was down in Tennessee after my mother passed away. And so, what are we going to do with the cat? So, daughter
No,
number
this was
three,
before. She
well, this,
um she gave up housekeeping when she was 98 and she didn't think the cat would like the retirement home.
right.
Yeah, we actually
Yeah.
had her for a couple of years.
And I remember going to pick up Rosie. We drove down. My wife and I volunteered to drive down and back in like 2 days. One day down to Knoxville, and then one day or Oak Ridge, and then one day back again. And we were staying at the Bay Point Inn for a couple of days, one of our rare times out, having a great time. And as that wrapped up, I just said, let's just drive to Tennessee, pick up the cat, and come back. And so we drove all the way down there from Hastings and Gun Lake, all the way down to Oak Ridge. And then the next day, we drove back up to Grand Rapids and brought the cat up. She was a wonderful traveler, just sat in her cage, occasionally looked out the window to see what was going on, and happy to be on yet another adventure.
Yeah, she was a very sweet cat.
Yeah, and that's not the only cat you have.
Yeah, I've got Ollie is the other one. So Rosie is so friendly that she gets so sad when the house is empty that we used to hear her crying outside. So the
Oh,
vet recommended that we get her a brother, so she's got a little brother.
neat. Yeah, two
Yeah.
cats. Everybody in our
Yeah.
family has animals. My brother's always had a big dog. Doesn't have at the moment, but we'll likely get another one here. You got the two cats. Daughter number two has two dogs, and daughter number one runs a dog rescue and
Yeah.
has a handful of animals that she takes care of and does a great job with that. So a lot of
Yeah.
animals in our family, but Rosie is something special.
All right, so I got a lot of these after Grandma passed. We went down there and I was looking through some old scrapbooks. So a lot of these were pictures that I took of pictures. So a lot of them are me and Grandma and Grandpa at family camp. So that's why I'm in so many of these. They're just what I had. All right, so
Okay,
do you know
neat.
where we were? Do you know where we were at this one?
I think it might be your wedding.
It was. It was. My grandmas were my flower girls at my wedding. It was so much fun. They walked in throwing flowers at everyone. It was great.
We have
So
Eleanor
that
there
is
in the center. That's
Yep,
my
that's
wife's
mom's
mother.
mom on the left, and then Grandma Stefan on the right.
Hmm. That was
Hmm.
really neat. We had that at Noto's restaurant, and it was it was a great ceremony. And then right as the ceremony ended, out came the food, which is kind of
Hmm.
unusual for a wedding, but I thought it worked out fantastic.
I like to be pragmatic.
Hmm. Yeah, me too. Me too. It worked out
Yeah,
well,
and
and everybody was happy.
I had worked at Noto's in high school. I had played the piano there. and it's just a lovely place to have a wedding. So that's where we decided to do it. And we've known that family for many, many years. And it was just really a lovely day. And I was so happy to have both of my grandmas there and for them to have a starring role. That was really fun.
It was. And you've been
All
married
right.
for how long as we tape this?
13 years.
Okay, and for me, it's 46, be 47 in April.
Woo
My
woo.
parents made it to 54, even though they got married late. My dad, I think, was just a week or two shy of 37 when he finally got married
Yep.
after spending 5.5 years in World War II in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah. Speaking of,
And there's my parents. And of course, they were much younger then. That is my mother on the right and my father on the left. My father was a professional drummer for a while. He was up there and he could play just about anything. He could also play a little bit on the violin, believe it or not. There's a combination for you. And he was excellent on the harmonica. He did that whenever we would go camping out and he couldn't take his drums with him, something like that. So he would take the harmonica along. And a couple of his brothers were also very good harmonica players.
so
But
wait, what? Grandpa played violin? I've never heard this
you never
before.
heard that? Oh, no, no, no. He,
No.
he, he started out in music playing the violin.
Good for
Eh,
him.
yes. And then
I tried
his,
violin in like fifth grade. It didn't go too well. It was fun
oh, well,
though.
yeah, but you really took to the piano. You are
Yeah.
level 8 in England, right?
No one in the US knows what that means, but in
Right.
England it's kind of a big deal.
Okay. Well,
We'll do
that's,
that another episode.
there's what, 10 levels, right, that you can be at?
There's eight in the ABRSM system, which is the one I did, but every program kind of has their own.
My, my,
Anyways, back to Grandpa playing the violin.
right. Grandpa played the violin and anything on drums. He could play xylophone, you know, he had a wonderful set of hand painted maracas that he got in Mexico that he used. That was one of his prized possessions. And when he passed away, we buried him with his drumsticks. That kind
I
of
didn't know
interesting.
that either. Ah,
Yeah,
that's great.
pretty cool.
And, and
But
Grandpa was a singer.
yeah, and he sang. He could do so many different things. He could call square dancing. Get up there and do that. So, and of course, he was a liaison engineer for 34 years for Bell and Howell in the Chicago area. That was his job coming out of the war.
Mm-hmm. All right.
What's next? Oh my, that takes you back a while. That's my grandparents, and that's their wedding day in 1912. Okay, that's when that picture was taken. I don't know the exact date. My
So this
grandmother was
is
born in Austria and came to America by herself after she just turned 24 years old. Her parents had passed away. She didn't have anything left, and there was this war coming on, and so she decided to just hop on a boat, the Cleveland, we found out later, and sail to America. She got a job as a cook in the Chicago area for the Hibbard family. And my grandfather, who was Dutch, tall and pretty good looking, as you can see, he was the man who delivered milk and vegetables and produce to the residents, the Hibbard residents. And usually it was my grandmother who picked them up. And so that's how they got to meet. So it's
so
kind of
these
neat. And
are
my,
Louise's parents?
yes. And my
Okay.
grandfather lived to be 98. He was still playing cards like canasta and bridge when he was 98 years old. And he had a stroke and passed away. But
And what were their
pretty,
names?
John Buscher, Busscher, and my grandmother was Josephine. My grandfather used to say he was one Dutch guy amongst all the Germans, and the Germans pronounce a hard C. The Dutch would be soft. No, no, excuse me, it's the other way around. It's the Dutch that have a hard C, the Germans a soft C. So to all the Germans, he was Buscher. To all the Dutch, he was Busker. And their family was from Almelo, which is east of Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Now this is the one. Josephine is the one that she couldn't find her birth certificate in Europe.
Yeah, right. We looked
That's
for the
very
birth
interesting.
certificate. My grandmother and my mother was 9 or 10 years old. hopped on a ship and sailed over to see if there was any inheritance left. And because there was such a amount of inflation back during that time in Germany and Austria, she lived in a little tiny town of Ibs on Derdona, Ibs on the Danube River on the Austrian side in the turn of the century, and she grew up there. And it was kind of interesting. They went back, and there was no record of her being born in that town. There was no birth certificate. There was no record of her in the school at in Ibs. Nothing. She just appeared out of nowhere, I guess. So it
Hmm.
was kind of interesting when we finally got through Ancestry.com and looked at her birth. She listed her birthplace as Vienna and not at Ibs. We know she had a stepbrother who was killed in World War
Maybe
One.
that's though, because like I'm from Comstock Park and I tell people I'm from Grand Rapids just
Right,
because.
right.
So
And
maybe she
I'm
just
from
did that.
Evanston, and I tell people I'm from
Yeah.
Chicago because
Yeah.
no,
Maybe that's
nobody.
just how they put it back then. Anyways,
Yeah,
very interesting. I wonder what the
yeah,
whole story is.
yeah. So and I could elaborate on that too. But they looked all around. There was one cemetery in Ibs, and they paved over it to put the new post office building there. So we couldn't even go look around at headstones to see
Hmm.
if we could find anybody there. Her name was Biber in Austria. Her last name was Biber. She was Josepha when she was there, and of course that became Josephine here in
Hmm.
the United States.
Hmm.
So interesting story. There's another
I think
picture of
that's
my
them again.
grandparents.
Yeah.
They don't look real happy there, do they?
Wasn't
But
that
that
back though when you didn't smile in your pictures because they took so long to take, or was this like single
Oh
image
yeah, and
photography?
that's true. There's so many pictures there, and for some people they just take a more stoic picture. But that is my grandfather and grandmother, and they lived for many, many years in Winnetka, Illinois, just north of Chicago, only about a mile away from where they filmed Home Alone. I used to walk past that house on my way to New Trier East High School every day,
Well,
the
we're
Home
gonna
Alone
get to your
house.
house. Just so we're all clear,
No,
you did not grow up in the Home Alone house or
no, no,
anything like
no.
it. But
No,
there
our
is a
house
picture
wasn't
of your
anywhere
house
near that
in it.
size. No, but that's my grandparents. Oh my goodness, this is my father's side of the family. You can see my grandfather there sitting in the chair. His name was Philip Steffen, and he was born in Luxembourg. And then my grandmother, over on the right side there, you can see her. She was also born in Luxembourg. Separate families. They didn't know each other until they both came and settled in the Chicago area. And they had quite a family. They had 8 children. 7 of them were boys. My father was the youngest, and
So he's the little one in the white christening gown, right?
yes, that is
Mm-hmm.
correct. And all
Yeah.
the little boys were the white christening gowns too. And right in the very middle of the picture is my Aunt Mary, and she was the one girl amongst all the boys, and she lived to be 95. So it's a little
Fun fact, we
longevity
have your
there.
christening gown. We have your christening gown, and Anne gave it to me.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Uh-huh, the one that you and her and your brother all wore.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep, we have
That
it.
interesting. But they
So
grew
they
up
were
then on the
from,
on in Granville Avenue in Chicago. My grandfather ran the Chicago Growers Association. He worked many, many hours. Before he had a car, he had a horse cart, and he trained the horse to go from their house on the north side of Chicago to the Southwater Market. And then the horse would kick the cart and wake my grandfather up so he could go to work.
hmm,
And my father said there were days when he worked 15, 16 hours. They were hardworking people, some of these immigrants who came here from Europe, and they raised quite a family. Uh, it's kind of interesting. And my father again was the youngest, and my father lived to be 90. He was the last of the kids that was alive.
I remember going to Uncle Hank's birthday party when I was
Hmm.
really little. I
Yeah,
won a
yeah, that
book
was
and I never saw the book. I don't know
yeah.
what it was about. I don't think I could even read back then. It was
Hank
like,
was an amazing guy. He watched two wives die of cancer on him and left him all alone at the end. But he was the most happy-go-lucky guy, and like so many people of that generation, they were just so happy to be alive. They had survived the Great Depression and World War II. so many different stories. My father, get this, this is an interesting story. My father uh, and two of his friends, they were seniors in high school, left their mother a note when school got out in June and just said, we're riding our bicycles to Minnesota to look for work. We'll see you in September. And this is a kid who's like 17 years old, maybe. He just took off, didn't know where he was going or anything. And so they rode their bicycles to Minnesota, found work on a farm. And my dad said he came back to Chicago in the first week of September with $40 in his sock that he had earned over the course of the summer. And it was one less
Hmm.
mouth to feed.
Hmm.
So
All
interesting.
right.
Yeah, that was interesting. That I may still have that trophy here somewhere. That
Hmm.
was from the BAHIBA, is the Bell and Howell Employees Benefit Association.
Oh, I see.
Uh, Bell and Howell had a building that was like, I think, 4 blocks by 2 blocks. It was a huge building, and they made every movie projector in the world. They made movie projectors for Sears and Montgomery Ward and Kmart, and of course the Bell and Howell brand as well. And my dad, that's typical what he wore to work every day. It was a white shirt, a tie, and short sleeves, and he would put on his smock and his safety goggles if he was working in the lab that day. But pretty interesting. $25 gift certificate. What would be that? What like that today? I mean that's probably, oh, I would say 1968, 70, something like that when he won that
Wonder
trophy.
if the D2642 was his employee number.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, that could be. Bullseye for John Stefan.
All
Wow.
right. Where are we now?
Oh my goodness.
I, I remember those shoes.
How tall you are. Where
I
were
think
we?
mom got those for me for first grade so that the teacher
Okay,
wouldn't have to deal with me not being able to tie my shoes.
we're definitely at a beach, and
Silver Lake, right?
I think that's Silver Lake. Yeah, we spent
Yeah.
how many years did we go to Floridale? 5 years maybe. We were there,
It was great
which
fun.
is a resort which is no longer there anymore. Remnants of there. There's still a resort there, but it's all private homeowners rather than the one group.
Yeah, so it
Uh,
was
it,
called Floridale Resort and it was on Silver Lake. And I was a kid about that big and I would go back to school and the teachers would say, "What did you do this summer?" And I would say, "I went to Floridale." And they would say, "Oh, honey, you went to Florida." And I would say, "Nope, definitely didn't. Went to Floridale." And they would say, "Oh, honey, it's pronounced Florida." And then I would give up.
I remember that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those where you can't win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we had great fun there.
we would take the dune ride, and we did the dune ride and came out to Lake
Hmm.
Michigan there, and that's probably where that is.
Hmm.
No, by the way, I'm being a good dad. I'm ready to catch you if you for some reason fell off.
I don't look
But
scared. Everything looks fine.
no, you weren't
Must have been
scared.
fine. I'm still
All three of you
here.
girls did gymnastics, and I mean, I can barely do a somersault. I don't know where that came from, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's my mother and father, and where would that be? Is that Floridale too? It's got to be because they're wearing a
Yeah.
button, aren't they?
Grandma's wearing her name tag.
Yeah, yeah. So that would have
Yep.
been let's see,
Well, if I was
so what,
five,
late
1997
'80s
or
maybe.
1987, 88. Yeah.
Let's say late '80s would be where that.
Yeah.
And the hosts were Ed and Dolores Bauer, if anybody remembers them from up there in Oceana County. So
All
yeah.
right. Not the biggest, not the greatest photo of a photo, but here we are.
Well, and there's my father playing harmonica.
Mm-hmm. Looks like I'm jamming with him.
Either that or you're stuffing a hot dog in like Joey Chestnut, one of the two. I can see the
Yeah.
Floridale over there on the left side. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we had a talent night. Remember that?
Yep.
And
Yep.
Dad played the harmonica, and I don't know what you did, and I did the takeoff on "Hello Mudda, Hello Fada." Remember that? Here I am at
Yeah. It's a
Floridale.
classical music song. Is it? I'm gonna forget the name. It's in one of my books, but it's actually a famous classical piece that you would sing
Uh,
to.
yes, 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 yes. Alan Sherman did a takeoff on that and did a song about a kid at camp named "Hello Mudda, Hello Fada." And I rewrote the words for that and sang that, and it went over well. It did. I
Yeah.
got quite a response to that.
All right, now we're back in Illinois.
That's the old house that I grew up in, a 1637 Spencer in Wilmette, Illinois. We were across the street from a park. Great place to grow up. A lot of interesting people. Uh, we had the street there to the right, on the right side. That would be on the west side. On the left side of us, there was a wonderful couple who had come from Japan to work for the Bank of Japan. And on the other side of them was Brant Miller, who was a meteorologist who did the weather on one of the stations in Chicago, on the NBC station, I believe. So we had quite the neighborhood there. And my dad loved his porch, his screened-in porch in the back, and we just had a great time. So I was born in Evanston, lived in Evanston for about 3.5 years until my father built a house. He was the general contractor himself in Wilmette, and then he always wanted to move to this house. So when this house came up, we moved from the first rather small house into this one, which was bigger. Interesting thing about the house, it did not have any duct work in it. It was heated by radiators with a rather small 3/4 inch tube of hot water that went throughout the house from a boiler in the basement. The home was built in, I believe, about 1910 or thereabouts, maybe even earlier than that. So it was an interesting house to grow up in. And again, that was
And
in
we
Wilmette,
would watch
Illinois.
Lawrence Welk and then we would play bingo.
Yep, Lawrence Welk was a big thing. My dad was a professional drummer for a while, played big band and swing, and you watched on Saturday night, you watched Lawrence Welk and then the Hollywood Palace, especially if Frank Sinatra was going to be on. And then on Sunday nights, you watched Ed Sullivan. And I
And then when
remember,
we were in college, it was Grandpa and the bottomless glass of wine. So
yep.
they would sit down for dinner, and Louise, Grandma, would say, "Okay, John, you can have one glass of wine with dinner." And Grandpa would like come up with some reason to send Grandma in the kitchen. He'd be like, "Oh, Louise, can you get me a napkin?" And she'd be like, "Oh, sure, John." And then when she was gone, he would pick up the bottle of wine and wink at one of us and dump more in his glass.
Mhm.
And that's how
Yeah,
he got his wine with dinner. Sneaky,
yeah,
sneaky
and
guy. It worked.
my mother had a cousin Ludwig, that escaped Germany, right, or Bavaria, right before World War II broke out. He was kind of like the Sound of
Hmm.
Music, running to get away, and
Hmm.
he had an import business here, and had a
Hmm.
complete Rathskeller in the basement. I remember going over to Uncle Ludwig's, we called him, and he had floor to ceiling murals of Bavaria on the walls, and it just
Hmm.
it just reminded him of home. But he would have all of these imported cheeses and sausages and everything, and it was just a wonderful place to be, place to grow up.
And I still remember the way the piano sounded in the house. They had a lovely baby grand.
Yeah, it was a baby grand, and that was my mother's prized possession. As soon as she could save her nickels to get that,
Hmm.
that's what she got. And she played piano almost every day, just marvelously.
Yep.
She could sight read. She
It
was
was
the
too
lead
bad that
soprano. No, go ahead.
when she gave up housekeeping, I wasn't in a position to take the piano, but I'm sure somebody loves it.
Yeah, and it was tuned regularly and everything. My mother
Hmm.
was the lead soprano for the St. Mary's Church Choir in Evanston, Illinois, and St. Mary's drew all this marvelous talent from Northwestern University, and they would just I would be up there sitting in a corner while they did the Hallelujah chorus at Christmas and Easter, and I mean the place would just literally shake. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was so well done. They would always get a standing ovation from the crowd after they did it, and they did the long version. If I remember right, it went about 7 or 8 minutes.
Wow.
But very interesting. And my mother was the lead soprano, and along with a woman by the name of Marie Rake, Rake. And there we all are again, Care Bears.
So So if you've been watching The Man Cave over the years and you saw all the Care Bears, this is where they came from. We all loved Care Bears. I got a Care Bear for Christmas and my birthday twice a year, every year for I don't know how many years. I think I got the first one when I was 3 and the last one when I was 12. That was all I wanted for like a decade. So that's why Bill Steffen had 20 Care Bears to
Hmm.
use during COVID in the Man Cave.
And you can see me in the back on the right, and Mom is asleep, as you can see. There's my sister Ann with the frizzy hair. I don't remember her with the frizzy hair very often, but that's and my father and mother. And between my mother and my father is my brother Dave, looking real serious here. He's the guitar guy of Chicago. If you got a decent band in Chicago, you probably know who my brother is. He makes
Yeah,
guitars.
you're not the only famous person in the family.
Yeah, and that's something. He has
Yeah.
played in dozens and dozens of different groups. In fact, the year before COVID, he played with 15 different bands. And he had 129 gigs in the year before COVID. So pretty interesting. And several times he has been part of the opening act at the Horizon in front of like 17, 20,000 people. They were the opening act before Martina McBride, Randy Travis. He's played with Isaac Hayes. My brother can play anything. He will play,
Mm-hmm.
heavy metal, acid rock, and then he'll turn around and play bluegrass on a mandolin.
Mm-hmm.
He can play anything. He did a Fleetwood Mac cover band for a while, and he had to learn banjo for that, so he picked up on that. And he was part of a really good Beatles cover band, and they got invited to go to Beatles Fest in England, where he was one of the bands that played there and got an all expense paid trip there and everything. What was really neat about that is that he got to use the instruments that they had there in England. He didn't have to cart all these guitars across the ocean or anything like that. So
Hmm.
interesting. Well, who's that?
That's me and Grandma playing in a
Yeah,
sandbox.
yeah.
Oh,
That's something.
how sweet. That must have been, yeah, she's wearing her name tag, so that was at family
Yeah,
camp too.
at Floridale too. Yeah,
Yep.
interesting. Yeah, we did sandcastles. We did that, and
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of fun. I worked the morning shift at ZZM in the early days, and I would get out of work at about 12:45. It was more like 1 o'clock, and then I would run home, pick up the kids, and we would go to Hoffmaster State Park. Sometimes stop in Fruitport at the park there, Pomona Park, right at the edge of Spring Lake. And then we would go to Hoffmaster State Park and come back. Where would we go?
The Whippy Dip.
The Whippy Dip. Yeah,
And
quite a
then when
treat.
you went to nights on Tuesdays, you would take me to Mr. Fables, and that was great fun too.
Right, the nickel for the fun machine, right? And
Mm-hmm. I
Mr.
thought the woman
Frables.
who gave me those nickels was the coolest woman ever.
Hmm. Yep, that was a lot of fun. And you would get chicken strips, and I'd get some breakfasty kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good times.
That was a lot of fun.
All right.
That's a my dad's wearing a shirt from Washburn. My brother worked for them for a period of time. He worked for U.S. Music. He worked for Parker, and brought guitars to some really famous people. I mean, he spent part of a day with Paul McCartney and Bono and you know Glenn Campbell and some really famous people over the years. Is that he's holding a badminton racket, isn't it, or a tennis racket?
I think that's what tennis rackets look like back
Yeah,
then.
but I don't remember us playing tennis that much. Maybe was that still at Floridale?
Well, it doesn't look like we're playing. It looks like we're sitting in the grass and taking pictures.
Hmm. Yeah,
Maybe we just like to pretend.
a lot of happy fun days together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's the last one. Let's see. Yep. There we go. All right. Well,
Okay,
that was great.
yeah,
Well,
reminisce
if
one.
you're still watching, thank you. Maybe we're only preserving family history between the two of us, but hey, maybe 10 people will want to watch.
Could be. Never
So, Dad,
know.
how do you like
It's
your new channel?
it's free. Yeah, this is fun, and I really appreciate the people that have come on board here on the YouTube channel and also at BillSteffen.com.
Yes, everyone, thank you for helping us grow. It's been so fun. And I'm the Peter Ducey, Mr. Producer of this situation. The family member that's hanging out. So
Yeah.
it's very fun. So now we just put these family memories up here. So thank you for watching and sharing in them with us.
Yep. Have a nice day, everybody.
All right, goodbye.